All right, here we go, Rob. Oh, jeez. Let's try that again.
Todd and Rob in the afternoon.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the new media show. I'm all thumbs today, Rob, trying to get all the buttons pushed. So anyone
Yeah.
that's still here that was watching me side of my head for the last 2 minutes, thanks for hanging out and watching the side of my head. So we need to have
I
you.
thought it was just as simple as pushing one button, and yeah,
We need to have you in the back juggling or something, to entertain them while we're
right. Balls in the air. Yeah, I could get a couple of balls and juggle them on the screen. That might be more entertaining than seeing us with microphones in our face.
Right. And it's been just absolute. I think the whole week's been, for a better word, busy and nothing new there. But hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. You guys don't give a crap. But one thing you may give a crap about, I don't know, I guess I'm just jumping in here, Rob, is I know you've talked to him because I asked if you've talked to him, and I've talked to him, and I know who they haven't talked to, but Facebook is coming.
Yeah, well, they've kind of announced that they're coming, so
yeah, and
it's not like it's a NDA scenario necessarily.
Well, so. I had a non-NDA discussion today, and then got the NDA paperwork 15 minutes ago. So,
well, I think once we get beyond, into the depths of the details, that's when the NDAs are coming, right?
So I spent an hour on the phone and sent over our best practices document that we give every new entrant in the podcasting space. And it's a 5-page of lessons learned from every company that's done things and why you shouldn't do it this way or that way.
Yeah.
And I said, please, please, please make a portal. Don't do an API. But anyway, it's they look like they're pretty serious.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. It's still a little hard to say how much impact it's going to have, but I think that they aren't the only platform that's coming, and so they're not the last, but they certainly are a big fish.
Yes, as I told them, I said, you guys have the potential of making as big or bigger as an impact as Spotify did. If you do this correctly, it could be an inflection point for us. Right. I guess from that perspective, I actually even talked to them about Podcast Index 2.0 stuff.
Right.
And some of the stuff that's going over there with the Ping initiative. And
it's not going to be exactly like what you have experienced working with a Spotify or a Pandora or an Apple as far as how it works with them. Facebook is going to take their own secret sauce and apply it here. I don't know. It's not really secret sauce, but their own internal process for, like creating a show page is different than what you may be accustomed to, but that's more compatible with their platform and how they've always done things.
And I think too, they asked some specific questions about what do podcasters want. And I really said 3 primary things. Number 1, build audience. Number 2, help them monetize. And number 3, help them build engagement. So.
And 4, don't be a podcast host.
Well, they're not coming to compete with us. They're going to pull the RSS feeds.
Right, exactly.
So they're not becoming a host,
right?
At least in the stuff I've seen so far.
They don't really, if you look at Facebook just in general, they don't publish any of their content externally. So that would be an exception.
Right. So, and they're going to go pass through. So they're not going to cache.
Yep.
Which, is good news. And I think they've already gotten feedback from other parties about that.
Oh, yeah. Well,
because she
you
said
gave them that feedback too. So, right.
Yeah. But I basically kind of I took some time and gave some history,
Hmm.
and I think they were willing to. I think they they were furiously writing notes. I will say that much. So at least they have 2 pages of stuff
Yeah.
to mull over.
Yeah. I think that they want to enter the medium in a good way. There definitely is a lot of history in entering the medium in the wrong ways. So we should be able to build on top of that and help them. So,
I
right.
told them, I said, you really want to make this available to everyone as soon as possible, and if you don't, then you need to be very public about why you can't.
Hmm.
And I said, because if you release it for some and not others, you're going to build animosity from the get go.
Right.
And, you probably don't want to do that. And I think they're genuinely trying to figure out how they can help the creator. And that to me
Right.
was that's a lot different attitude. Because the attitude I've heard so far is give me content, give me content, give me content. And for Facebook to ask, what can we do for the podcasters, for the creators?
Hmm.
I brought up, well, I just kept using a competition against them. I kept saying, all right, I do YouTube Live. I don't have a big enough audience to get tips. No one can tip me on YouTube Live. They can't throw me $5. I have to be a
Hmm.
big star. I said, why does YouTube do that? Because they still get their cut. Even if I'm a small producer, if someone throws me $5, they take their cut, they would still make money, but yet I have to be a big shot. So I told him, I says, whatever you do, and if you're going to help podcasters monetize, and I know you're coming up, Facebook's already announced they're coming up with a Patreon competitor, but I said, if you're going to help podcasters and let them monetize, don't set arbitrary monetization levels. Don't let the average podcaster monetize from the get-go. If you have a tip jar or whatever you have to help
Right.
that content.
Right.
And I said, don't reserve that for the 3%.
Right.
Is
Make it
it-
available to everyone.
Because
Right.
if you want the 97% of podcasters to promote someone listening to their show on Facebook, I said, you have to take care of the podcaster.
Right.
And I think some of these platforms need to start thinking about that a little bit.
Hmm.
I can't make no money in Spotify. Why would I ever promote people to go listen to my show on Spotify?
Right. And the podcaster is going to have the control over whether or not they have a podcast show page
Right.
on Facebook. It's not like it's going to get auto generated for them.
Right.
Because that's how Facebook has been doing it all along right now. You go in and you create a page on Facebook. And then content gets published there or shared there, and that's kind of how they're going to do it, which is different than what you see on Spotify, where it's, you submit it over there and they auto-generate everything for you. So, right.
So what she didn't contemplate was, it says, I want to control where my show is too. So how are you going to keep someone from hijacking some of the bigger shows and putting them on their pages? I
Right.
said, how are you going to authenticate? Because I said, my
Mhm.
Facebook email address is not the same as the address that's in my RSS feed.
Right.
And I said, in some podcast hosts, the email address that is in the RSS feed doesn't go to the
To the content
podcaster, it
creator.
goes to the company.
Right. Right.
And she said, who does that? And I gave her a list.
Yeah.
And I also, so some podcasters are going to get pissed off about this, but I cautioned her on letting podcasts into the system that have one episode.
Yeah.
I said, there's a graveyard of podcast with, someone you're already partnered with? Do you want 1,000,000 dead shows? So, or, all of a sudden seeing this population of pages that are test, test, test.
Well, isn't that a little bit of a different
It's a little,
question?
it
Yeah.
might be, but at the same time,
Right.
you don't get on iHeart with one episode.
No.
You don't get on
True.
Pandora with one episode.
Right. Well, that one episode can just be a teaser trailer.
Teaser could be a
episode.
teaser.
Right. Which could get your show page established, but I think
So
it's up to Facebook. I don't know that Facebook would ever put that limitation on there, Todd.
yeah, I don't know, but I just, I think that there has to be, because when you search on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
do you want pages? Now, some companies are probably going to auto-generate pages for podcasters. So do you want, that's what I'm worried about, is the auto-generation.
Well, I don't know that that's technically possible, because I know that the current API where you can share
if you
stuff over to Facebook,
if
doesn't
you
necessarily do that.
authenticate, if the podcaster authenticates and the system creates a page for you,
right,
as part of the process of setting up a show,
you could,
but
Facebook has already told me that they're not going to do that.
oh, well, that I didn't get that info. Well,
Okay.
good. So
There's not going to be any auto generation of pages.
that's beautiful.
Which raises the bigger question is, when you submit to Facebook, what are you actually submitting to? Which is the other bigger question, right?
I've had a developer account with Facebook for a long time, and I have the ability to push AMP post into, it's kind of a unique way to show audio on a Facebook page. It's complicated. It's not easy. It's not for the faint at heart. And
so what's going to happen is the podcaster is going to have to create a page, and then they're going to have to link up that page with the publishing process,
right,
off of our platforms. Not unlike what they've been doing for years with
posting. But they're going to take the feed, Rob.
Yeah,
so
right. It's going to populate all the episodes. And then when you do that, and then each time a new episode comes out, obviously it'll update.
And I talked about what happens when someone moves from Libsyn to Blueberry or Blueberry to Libsyn. You're going to have to recognize the redirect. You're going to have to update your system with the new RSS feed, or you're going to have people screaming at you. Now,
because it's not updating.
Because it's not updating. And then we talked about that, about the expectation. The expectation of updating, every episode in a timely manner, and the challenges with, some of that, and becoming.
And how is your cover art that shows up on Facebook getting updated? Do you have to do it separately in Facebook, or does it happen off of the RSS feed? What about your series description? Do you have to update that separately, or does it come out of your RSS feed? Those are all questions that are not answered at this point.
I'm sure we'll get to see it when we sign the NDA, and they can't talk about it.
Right.
Hello, Shoko.
I wouldn't say it's any big proprietary thing, but
yeah,
I'm sure there's aspects of this that we won't be able to talk about.
So anyway, I just, they're making the rounds. At least they're talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
And now I get to once again sign my life away and have to mute myself.
Right. That's all the discussion that you can have on this, Todd.
Because I asked her today, so are you going to show me any screenshots? And she said, well, not today. I said, I was going to ask you permission to record this and then share it with my team. And she said no. So.
Yeah.
But I did ask.
Right. You have to ask.
Yeah, you do.
So.
Did you glean anything else from your call?
I think it was a pretty short call, really. So it was really kind of just, they wanted to learn from us more than anything. And there was a little bit of sharing from their side, but
I was on the phone for an hour.
I got a sense that they're kind of early in the process. So.
I felt so too. It felt to me it was early days yet here. And because I asked on a specific piece and they said, well, we're collecting this information to go back to the team to get it priorities on it. I'm like, oh, so some stuff is not even started yet.
Right.
So.
Yeah. There's going to be a few more surprises coming too, Todd, not from them, from other places that are brewing out there that podcasters will be like,
why here?
What's that?
Why here?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of them will make sense when it actually happens, but if you were to mention who, their eyes would cross and they're like, huh? There was another article that showed up that I came across. It was actually linked to in Pod News, but it was from AdWeek. I don't know if you saw this one, Todd, about ad spot links and what works and what doesn't work. So I don't know if you saw that or not. But it's a whole article talking about different kind of ad links, 15, 30, 60 second, what works, what doesn't work, and as well from research that's been done on that topic. And it was an interesting find. I guess the recall, this is a little maybe counterintuitive to some degree, which is what makes it interesting, is that the 15-second spot had the strongest recall of the ad brand. But the 60-second ad spot, host read or otherwise had a better, I guess, results around consideration, education, and moving listeners to take action.
Okay.
So, which actually makes sense. I mean, you have more content, right? There's more of a chance for pitching, reasons and rationales and offers. So you kind of have that consideration, education, and then you have a little bit more time to deliver a call to action too. So I think that makes sense. I would say that the recall on the longer ads is a little bit less, but it's very, very similar. So I don't know if that falls along with your kind of perception. And the 30-second ad generated a very similar kind of lift in brand awareness. But the 60-second ad actually resulted in more lift. So somewhere between a 15 and a 60, I would say probably 15 and a 60 and longer. So I would say like a host reads are typically in the 60 to 90 second range, usually, or longer. Those that actually are probably even better, but they didn't really consider the longer than 60-second ad. So any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm of the belief that most podcasters do much longer reads than 60 seconds most of the time anyway.
Right.
And
on the host read side. Right.
Yeah. So it's irrelevant. They're going to do the ad to its extent, but if that's what they found in their study, it's what they found in their study.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was actually done by SXM Media, which is basically SiriusXM in collaboration with Pandora and all those folks, is where that study came out of.
So I was called out on Twitter late last week.
Yeah, I was wondering if our little discussion in last episode sparked any comments.
Well, it sparked. Well, I knew he was working on an article.
Oh, yeah.
And he
What's
can't.
the sound?
Yeah,
podcasting?
from Brian
Right. Right.
It Sounds Profitable. So I'm sure he is listening and waiting for my opinion on his piece.
Yeah. I read it too.
Yeah, so I'll let you go first. How do you? What was your reaction to the write-up?
Well, I don't think that he was saying anything too much different than we were saying. It's
I
just
don't
that
think so. Yeah.
maybe he was being a little nicer about it.
Well,
It was more like, this is the situation, and he was, where we kind of gave a little bit more of a passionate response
there was,
to,
but
right.
what's funny, and hang on, let me get ready here, if I can find it. Okay, here we go.
How dare you? James Cridlin.
So James wrote he said in Pod News, do you use your podcast download figures to report ad impressions to your advertisers? If you're using DAI, those numbers aren't going to be the same. Now, first of all, podcast download figures report impressions. Now, there's no such thing as a impression in podcasting.
Right.
There is a download. So do you use your podcast download figures to report ad downloads to your advertiser? Oh, that's okay. So let's. I know.
One thing, I don't think I made it really clear in the last episode about one little aspect of this conversation,
okay.
and that's the aspect of multiple ads in a podcast.
Right.
So I think most of what we were talking about is just the assumption that there was only one ad in one podcast episode, right? But if you have multiple ads, that little ping that we were talking about could ping multiple times for each episode download.
Of course.
So if you're counting total impressions, if you have 2 ads in one episode, you're going to have twice as many pings, right? As downloads.
But even in a download, you're going to count that. You're going to bill each of those advertisers a 1.
Right.
And if you're using it, I want to get away from using the word impression. It really bugs me a lot.
Well, it falsely gives the impression that it's a listen. That's what it does.
And he did a pretty good job in this article of staying away from the word impression.
He did, right?
He did, and I'll give him credit for that.
Well, because he also recognizes that using that word implies listens.
Right. So I will say this, though, that he definitely lumped Blueberry into third-party Prefix Analytics folks, but I also have raw log files too. So, we offer that to non-hosting customers. Non-hosting customers that do ad deals with us are measured differently. I guess I'll just say it that way. So, there's different considerations, but the simple fact that everything was pretty close on this, and I guess I'd have to read through it line by line by line, but there was only a couple things I kind of went about. But overall, I think he did a pretty good job on the article. He's sitting back at his seat saying, "Holy shit, Todd just said he did a good job."
No, I think he did. I think he discussed it probably less passionately than we did.
But there should not be a discrepancy.
So, right.
If done correctly, there should be no discrepancy. There should be 0. If Blueberry was sending a ping and analyzing raw log data, if we did that correctly, there should be no discrepancy.
Yeah.
There should be, because at the time that I'm about ready to send a ping, I would have to analyze who's requesting the file. Is it a bot? Have I seen this from the third time? All those rules that go in, and we talked about this before. Is this fraud? All those things would have to be processed the same way as the ping.
As the download.
The download.
Right.
So in reality, if you do both, if you cross-check your raw log data with a ping, those numbers shouldn't match. If the file got to the point where it delivered the actual media. So in a redirect, you won't know that. You can't make those numbers match. You can't. That's why when there's an adjustment made on total number of downloads internally to become IAB certified on redirects. And that's a whole different story. But
Right.
I don't think that if there is a delta, it should be very, very tiny.
And the bigger thing is there a distinction with a difference here?
Right. Is it 10? Is it 500? What is the delta? So he does say something here. It says download numbers download numbers are conflated with impression, and that's a problem. No, for those of us that count downloads, it's a download. We don't count downloads as impressions.
Right. We don't use that word at all.
He says there's absolutely nothing wrong with building a campaign off of downloads. Well, that is the standard.
Yeah.
That
That's
is
not
the
some
standard. That's not
some exception.
That's not
right?
exception. That is the standard. That's the
Right.
that's the segment of this, because he is making it appear that the ping is superior to the download, and it's
Well,
not.
if you're an advertiser,
Oh, it's
from
going
an
to
advertiser perspective, it is a superior piece of information, right?
no.
If they have the assumption that somehow that's more accurate.
Okay, so if you're looking at the downloaded media, and let's say it's in 1 hour program, and I know that 15 minutes, let's say the ad went from 15:00 to 15:30, and I know from the download data that media file got to 15 minutes and 31 seconds. That ad got delivered.
Right.
It got delivered. I can count that. Okay.
Right.
So a ping is sent not at the end of the ad delivery, I don't think. I think it's sent at the beginning. So anyway, the download
It's not a
is
distinction. That's the thing.
the download is the gold standard.
Right. That's the master piece of information, right? Based on the IAB standards,
Right.
right? Any kind of ping on there,
As long as they follow all the IEB standards to qualify what has created the ping,
right?
and what the request for the ping was. I know you guys are probably like, we don't give a crap about all this, but
Well, I mean, it could work if you're following the same principles as
Right.
the download,
Yeah.
and you're just counting how many ads are in the content, right? So if you have 3 different ads in there, you have 3 different ads that ran in the content, right?
But
so
with the
Yeah,
raw
right.
log, and it even says in the IB spec, and I'm not going to read it here, but it basically,
Right.
you have to, if you have the ability to, you have to count whether or not that media got delivered. Yeah, you can qualify it at 1 minute, but if you've inserted the ad, you have to be assured via log data that it went. So
Yeah, but Todd, technically, if you're following the IAB specifications, you should still be able to count that as being delivered, right? If you've had 1 minute of content
not technically.
downloaded.
I think the spec does cover if you've inserted an ad and place an ad where you have the responsibility to know if that section of the media got delivered. We wouldn't
not-
count it.
Yeah, but
Maybe we're at a higher standard, but I have to go
yeah, I
read.
was gonna say not all the platforms track at that level.
Right.
That's the thing.
Right. So,
I mean,
and
if you look at total downloading of the information,
he said,
right,
do not try to compare downloads to ad delivery. It is
It has to be the same
absolutely
thing.
has to be the same thing.
right. We're trying to slice hairs over something here that
Yeah.
that there's really not much of a technical difference. And
Did you see
And-
the post I
yeah.
made to a certain forum that you and I are both in? Maybe you didn't
No.
see the Slack
no, I
post I
haven't seen
made,
it.
but I raised the question in a specific channel that you're in
Mhm.
to see what kind of response we get, because
Did you get a response?
not yet.
Mm.
And I actually can't talk about it on the show if I do, or I'll be violating a bunch of stuff and be in big trouble. But
Right.
I've asked the question,
Mhm.
But, I think I agree with 90% of what he put in here.
Yeah, I think factually it's true. All that stuff is accurate. I think it's how it's characterized
He
is
says
a little more favorable.
he says what we he likes the ping. He says what we
Right.
specifically mean when we say IAB certified downloads. And again, he's only referring to those that. Here's the difference. He's intermixing people that have a prefix. With a prefix, there's only a certain amount of data that you can find out. There are sometimes you can actually know when a file completed on a prefix. It all depends on the platform, because we do get that come through.
Missing data.
You're missing data on a prefix. But he's in. So if you're billing purely on prefix on a non-IAB certified platform that has done the adjustment to be certified for prefix.
Right.
So most folks are doing measurement on ad campaigns on download log data.
Mhm.
That's the crux here. So I can say without a doubt that the ad was delivered on a log file download.
But are you analyzing it based on how much of that episode data was delivered?
Yes.
And then you're reporting back different.
It's up to those that are running campaigns to look at their reporting data and say, okay, 300 people didn't get to 25%. And the ad was at 50 or 26. So we shouldn't count those, we shouldn't count those 300 in the billing, even though it was a qualified download. That's up to the individual.
Do you think anybody's actually doing that?
Yes.
Todd?
I know some of our corporate clients are absolutely doing that. But
on the ad sales and delivery side?
Yeah. But here's the thing. It's all about a volume play. Depends on your volume. If you got 500,000 downloads on a single episode, and let's say 475,000 got to the 100% mark, and 25,000 had partials, and of those 25,000, 10,000 didn't get to the ad spot, it's really a matter of context, because it's also a matter of scope. So they're good. They already delivered 475,000 they're going to bill for. Is those 10,000 that didn't make the ad drop, is that going to matter in the billing? Probably not. If you are a small podcaster and you have 5,000 downloads and 300 didn't get to the ad delivery, is it going to matter? Probably not. We're really, it's up to the integrity of the person doing the billing. That's what it boils down to.
Well, it also depends on the terms of the advertising.
Right. And I think a lot of, I've actually reported 500 and 362 downloads and billed 5,362 downloads. But when you're probably doing a deal where it's a million downloads, they just probably round to the closest 1,000 and be done. So it's really about context. So, maybe I'm picking hairs here where it doesn't need to be picked, but.
Well, and if the terms of an ad buy have to be that granular.
It never is.
That means that delivery needs to be done on a platform that can deliver that kind of granular information.
And if you're doing, we've been tracking partial download data for years, but it really, if you think about modern stuff now, we talk about this all the time. There's a lot of devices out there that progressive download very quickly, get to 100% very quickly, and all the ads are delivered, yet no one has listened to more than 15 seconds of the content because it downloads so fast. That's right. So in the scheme of things, you've got fudge there anyway too.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yeah.
So,
And
I-
that's not something that you can actually
No.
filter out.
you can't. So, so I guess if we really got down and did the audit, it probably doesn't matter either way.
Right.
It's still a lot better than radio.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So,
Exponentially better than radio. Yeah.
and there is
But
a
not better than television. But
and there is a
definitely.
science to the redirect stuff and being able to, and let's be frank, there is I really can't, if I go into this, I go into a whole bunch of secret sauce, but there are adjustments made in every hosting platform that does redirects. There are, because your numbers will always be the most accurate with downloads.
Right.
With a redirect, at least with us, your numbers will always be lower if we do a head-to-head comparison. So if you had
You're gonna lose data. Right.
if you have 1,000 certified downloads on raw log files, your redirect downloads might be 950.
Mm-hmm.
It'll never be higher than the log data because there's certain stuff you can't qualify, you have to throw out, and then there is a formula applied.
Right.
And there's a whole bunch of factors, very complex factors,
Mm-hmm.
like the makeup of the players that pull the show. How many Apple Podcast users do you? How many Spotify? How many this? Because each of those players have different, how should we say it?
Different ways of pinging and
Pulling and different.
data.
There's a different weighting applied
Right.
based upon how each of those clients, major clients, pull the data.
And also I would think that there's a distinction based on the speed of the connections to the content too, to some degree.
But those files will deliver and give you a 201. But
Right.
on a redirect, you won't know that.
Right.
Well, sometimes you get a ping back. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I'm not 201. Don't quote me on that. I'm not the geek. But anyway, so, Brian, we spent a lot of time talking about this. I think you did a decent, I'll go with 90% on this. And he is kind of funny. He said in the beginning, he said, want to rile up a room full of podcasters while asking them what microphone is best? Ask them if they think there's a difference between an ad delivery and download, and stand back.
Could they possibly be talking about us, Todd?
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is not a new topic for us.
No, we've been talking about this for a long time.
Yeah, a long time.
A long time.
I know I've been talking about it since 2014 myself. So
Yeah. And the only people that know if the ad was really listened to is Apple, Spotify, Google, and the app owners if they're getting any play data. They're the only ones that really know. They're the only ones that really know if someone listened to something on the client side. The rest of it's just a guess.
Right.
And, we use lots of factors. I've talked about this before. It's not about the single download. How do I do ad planning? I look at a show over 3 months. I look at their download numbers for every episode in 3 months. I divide that. Let's say there was 12 episodes. I add them all up. I divide by 12. I get their average download for the 3 month period. I think that show can deliver this minimum number of completed downloads each on average. And then I look at their growth or I look at their decline. I factor that in. And in the end, I tell the media buyer, I can deliver 3,425,000 impressions over the next 3 months for this ad campaign based on this show's history.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? That has worked so beautifully for the past 15 years. I usually am within 1%.
That's good.
And it's high school math.
Right. It's not hard.
It's not hard. And it all averages out among multiple shows, and some do better, some do worse, some makes up. It all ends, in the end is spend the media buyers money. That's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're coming up short, and we know we're coming up short, then we add another show to the deal and run it out.
Well, Todd, moving on a little bit
Okay.
here too, I guess at the Apple WWDC event, I guess Apple announced some more privacy features
Mhm.
and the ability to allow users to see what domain names have been requested by any apps. So I guess it might help you be able to see where some of your data might be shared.
So the way I look at
Yeah.
this is it's limited in scope for now. It's only impacting Safari.
Right.
But if they continue to go down this path
Right.
and bring that tech to Apple Podcasts,
That's an if.
if
Right.
it would have an impact on counting for sure.
Well, it's going to let the user know what's going on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. And thank God Safari doesn't have really much podcast market share.
No, it doesn't.
So, but it will affect some.
And I also thought it was interesting that Apple's FaceTime is coming to the web.
Zoom stock
be a
went
nice-
down instant they announced that.
I would imagine. There's been a lot of play in that online video conferencing space, right?
I think they're late.
Well, they are, but they've got a lot of users that use FaceTime. So I'm sure they'll take away a little bit from all these other platforms. But the question is, I don't know that they're going to be doing any recording or anything like that, but we'll see.
Randall said if you have a pre-roll but download doesn't go long enough to hear the mid-roll, the advertiser did get an impression from the pre-roll and got a... Okay, so
Okay.
we need to remove impression from the English dictionary.
Well, it's in the online radio side because they can actually track that because it's a stream.
Yeah,
But,
I'm not going to try to argue between downloads and plays. That ship has sailed.
well,
Yeah.
I'm surprised that we didn't hear any feedback from anybody about our conversations about whether or not the industry is going to move towards using streaming technology.
Because it's still a download, Rob.
I know, I realize that, but if the advertisers, okay, let me lay it out to you. I think that the bigger thought has been, right, that we can unlock billions of dollars in ad spending if we can get, the actual playback data, right? What's the best way to get playback data?
Stream.
The stream. So, that's
A true stream, not a podcast stream that doesn't exist
Right.
currently.
Well, there is no podcast streaming.
Right.
That's a misnomer.
Right. It's a duplication of a term that most people don't fully understand. It's technically comes the same way, but just pushed by a different technology.
Well, then there's all sorts of different streaming technologies.
That's right,
too.
right.
I think that the most modern one right now is the HLS
Right.
streaming, which is the technology that YouTube uses to deliver all those videos.
Yep.
And it's not technically, it's not a whole lot different than downloading.
Mhm.
Actually, technically, it downloads to the player in batches of content. They just happen to be smaller chunks. And so it's kind of a little bit of a hybrid between what we're currently doing with podcasting and true streaming technology. So it's not like real streams, Todd, like or Windows Media streaming server. It's not that kind of technology. It's not I don't believe it's a variable bitrate stream that has that kind of capability.
Yeah.
So which is a whole nother conversation on the variable bitrate stuff. People have been doing variable bitrate MP3 files in podcasting for many years too.
True.
By accident.
And I think what we have is we have a lot of, lost my train of thought. We have a lot of folks in the ad delivery business that are absolutely unequivocally freaking out right now. And because they can't, and this is the beauty that podcasting has been able to obtain from the beginning, is privacy to a certain extent. And people are absolutely flipping out in the Apple ecosphere because Apple,
it's cracking down.
well, they didn't crack down, that they pulled the rug out from underneath them. And basically they're crying foul that they cannot do direct attribution. It used to be they would know who Todd and Rob were, actually.
Right.
And
cross-reference
that and market to us. Well, Apple removed that capability. Google Chrome, now you think there's a double-edged sword to this. Google has done the same thing in Chrome in a big way as part of the cookie crackdown. And now what you have is a tightening of privacy for people like you and I and people that listen to podcasts and are surfing the web that is way, way, way overdue. And all these businesses that have made billions of dollars on targeting us are going to be in trouble because now they're going to have a much harder time tracking us. And this is why Facebook and others are begging us to opt in. You do know that Facebook is going in the privacy settings. They're trying to get you to opt in to allow them to do what Apple has basically eliminated.
Right, and they're battling over that right now.
Right, and so, and when we have multiple states that are really going quickly towards more privacy stuff, measurement aside, the old model of podcasting where we knew who our audience was and we basically told the media buyers that this is our audience, trust us because we know our audience through demographic surveys, may see a resurgence. And we may get back to the point where media buyers don't have as much data as they used to have. And to me, I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
But not, the folks that are doing attribution in podcasting, they have to be worried about this.
Mm-hmm.
And again, my opinion on attribution has changed a little bit over the last couple of years. I think that if I can find a mechanism, well, first of all, number one, if I can guarantee that attribution data will only be used to help determine performance and not determine retargeting, I think I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a better outcome.
So the second that information is resold, then there's my problem. When it's resold or the companies that ask for the data gets the data directly and then uses that in other type of display advertising against us. So I think there's a good way to do attribution without having to go to bed at night feeling like you've rolled around in the mud a little bit.
Todd, there's an article in The Guardian that came out that said the headline is "Tragic but True: How Podcasters Replaced Our Real Friends."
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And the sub-headline is "The pandemic has seen audio shows fill a hole in our lives, providing companionship that is increasingly difficult to distinguish from the real thing." I think that's been a factor of podcasting since the beginning of it. But, it's interesting that people are referring to it as though it's something somehow new because of the pandemic.
Right.
I think it's one of the deep value equations of why podcasting is such a powerful medium.
Yep.
Not necessarily to replace your friends. I think that's an extreme connotation. I don't know that it is replacing friends. I think it's more you're creating new friends
Mm-hmm.
with podcasters because you're hearing their thoughts, especially shows that share a lot about themselves personally. I mean, Todd, I'm sure you'll remember this. Think about the impact that comedians had very early in the podcasting medium back in the 2009-10 window.
Yeah.
It was pretty profound back then.
Yep.
And that's what really drove kind of that next wave of podcasting prior to Serial.
Mm-hmm.
Was because, we came out of 2008 in a pretty deep trough around podcasting. I remember that time, and it was kind of a dark time for the medium. There wasn't a lot of enthusiasm, and coincidentally, that was at the same time that Facebook and YouTube and Instagram and all these platforms launched. Was in that time window.
Mm-hmm.
So all that attention went over to social media.
Right.
Even Twitter made that transition in that time frame, right?
Yep.
So, from a podcasting company to social media. So it's interesting. I mean, it's not surprising to you and I, but it's interesting that came out.
Well, I think we continue to see bold movement in the space. I think, based on how my phone's been ringing, there is desire for people to buy podcasting companies, to invest in podcasting companies, to, some of these big dollar acquisitions that were made has, changed the playing field a little bit per se.
Mm-hmm.
Valuations of 10 times revenue and sometimes 15 times revenue in the space is not unheard of right now. So, there's a lot of speculation that the podcasting space is going to continue to grow. I'm concerned about as people go back to work, whether that's the case or not. I think personally we'll show a little shrinkage. Maybe not. Time will tell. But
Shrinkage of new show creation?
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking? Okay. Yeah, I think so too.
But the current numbers don't bode that prediction at all. We're still piling them on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. The new show growth has never been this big, and I thought at the time it was just a temporary bubble in the growth of new shows, but it seems to have sustained itself.
Well, there's also a delta that we need to look at. There's if we throw out one party, take their numbers out of the equation, it's a very different. It's not these huge. It's not these backflip. Yeah, we're growing, but when it's like when I talk to people, like, well, we got a percentage of that, but
what nobody talks about is the percentage of shows that
die,
stay publishing new episodes beyond 90 days.
Right. I said, we're not, no one's talking about wow, there was 30,000 shows that were added. And I'm like, well, 25,000 of them were over here and 95% of them are dead.
Right.
So that's why the number is still staying, the podcast index number of active shows isn't like, if all these shows were continuing, we would have 1 million podcasts that were, actively producing content.
But we've got close to 4 million shows, but less than 1 million active shows.
3,963,000
Right.
and only 429,000 of them have created an episode in the last 30 days, 624 in the last 60 days. So go figure.
Yeah. So it'd be good, and nobody's, well, I don't know that nobody, it's not talked about, I guess, how many active shows there are, which I would like to change that conversation.
Yeah, me too. Let's talk about the active shows, the 624,000 or whatever the 90-day number is, which is probably 700 something.
And you could make a case that an episode in 90 days isn't really an active show either.
I would agree.
That could mean that many of those shows between the 30-day and the 90-day or 60-day and 90-day are basically pod faded.
Well, I would call those, let's say the number is, if you have 400,000 shows that have done an episode in 30 days, I would say that is your core active
That's your core group, right?
podcasting group. And then if you have another, let's just give the benefit of doubt and say 750,000. So let's say there's another 350,000 that will produce at least another episode between 60 and 90 days.
Right.
Then that's someone that's having a little fun and playing around, and someone that doesn't have too much time to put into a podcast.
Or they're doing a serialized program
that
has seasons.
Right. And they've done 12, 13, and they're going to be off for the next 4 months. So it could be that too. So even then, let's say that half of those 300,000 are ones that are doing serial. That still takes us to 575, 600,000 truly active shows that are out there. So, it's a bigger number than what it was before, but it's nowhere close to 3.963 million.
Well, if we compare, Todd, it'd be interesting to compare how many active shows there were prior to the pandemic.
I don't think the numbers changed that much.
Shows that there are now.
I don't think it's changed that much. I think if we'd probably go back and listen to some of our own shows, and we could probably get that number, because Daniel was pretty. Daniel, if you're listening, what was the number of active shows in January of 2020 or 2019?
Back than that.
The pandemic. This is 2021 now. So the pandemic started in March of 2020.
Right.
So how many active shows were there January of 2020 that were producing episodes in the last? I'm sure someone's got that data.
Right.
So
it'd be interesting to see what that delta is.
Yeah. I would bet it's not that big.
Well, it can't be, because I think back in those time frames, it may be doubled.
I don't think so. I think it was still around 400K
so.
in 30 days.
30 days.
The 60 and 90-day number would be lower. But I think the 30-day figure, we haven't moved much on you think about it. We've been talking about this a lot in the last 2 years. 400-some thousand in 30 days has been right 429. That number's barely inked up. So
I think that's a pretty big story. The more you think about it.
That's a big story.
I'm surprised James Cridlin hasn't zeroed in on that.
But it just shows you that we've talked about it 100 times on the show. It's talked about the pod fade numbers really, really high.
Right.
If you're still at episode, if you've made it to episode 25, congratulations. You're about 20% make it to that
in the
mark.
Top 20% of the content creators.
Right, because the other 80% have quit.
Right. Right.
So, congratulations.
Right.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner. The phrase that pays.
Todd, I think we need an audio clip of that.
Okay, well, if someone's listening, don't do that.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
The phrase that pays.
So I saw that Adam Curry is on the cover of Radio Ink magazine.
Yes, and I paid my $39 to get a subscription, and I I paid my, hey, Radio Inc. guys, I paid my money, but they got no email on how to get the magazine. So how I paid the money. Where's the email that says how I can access that? I go to the site and I try to log in and it's like, I don't know who you are, but you got my money.
Right. Right. Hey, Todd, did you see the article that was written by Stephen Goldstein about he used the Wheel of Fortune as an analogy to how to start your podcast?
Oh, I did not, but I
did see this?
No, is it pretty funny?
Yeah. I mean, Stephen's, he kind of takes, I mean, he's kind of a little bit like Tom Webster when he writes, right? He takes these funny analogies and applies them to various topics. But I guess the Wheel of Fortune starts playing the game in just 45 seconds from the start of the show.
Say that again.
The Wheel of Fortune starts actually playing the game within 45 seconds of actually starting the broadcast of the show.
Yep. So
it's not like they spend a bunch of time in introductions, intros, and lead-ins and ads and all this kind of stuff. Stephen used this as an example of what you should do with your podcast. So, kind of like what we do with this show. We played like a little sound clip, and I know a lot of the shows that I consult with, I recommend if you're going to play something at the beginning of your podcast, play it for like 5 seconds or something.
Yep.
And then get right into the content, or at least teasing what's coming up in the content. If you have other stuff that you need to do at the beginning, because, people are, especially these days with people just clicking play more and more, right?
Yeah. I break this rule though.
Why? Well, Todd, that's just, that's
not on this show, but my personal show.
Right. But I do think a lot of people nowadays, especially, just click play and they're sampling, right? They're giving it a try. If they like what they hear, they keep listening.
They're going to love what they hear on my show.
Conscious of that angle. I think, Todd, your show has a lot of baked-in audience. I mean, you've been doing it for so long. Yeah. So, which is different. This is more, I think, what a new show needs to think about.
Well, I still spend 7 minutes before I get into the juice. It's average.
Maybe you should get into the juice a little quicker and then play your stuff.
I tease them within the first 30 seconds what the top four articles are going to be.
Yeah.
So I give them a little tease. I do a little intro, talk about a little life, and then we get into the commentary.
Yeah, I think that formula has worked for you. Right.
Yeah, and when I get feedback, why you spend so much time talking at the beginning, I said, just go to 10 minutes. You'll find some content.
Right.
But here's the thing.
Well, it gets back to the other story too, right? People are tuning in because of the personality. They're tuning in because of a relationship with the host. So, what do friends like to talk about? They like to talk about their lives. They like to talk about things that are going on that are impactful. So I think, to take that earlier story that we talked about how podcasts are replacing our friends, you can't make a podcast that's impersonal and expect it to be personal.
Yeah. Yeah. I it's going to suck to sound like this, but most of my friends are in the podcasting space.
Yeah. Well, it's the same with me.
Yeah. So I live, breathe this thing 24/7. Well, I try to do it I try to do it 24/5 now.
24/5. I do too. I'll be honest with you, and it certainly helped that we stopped doing a Saturday show.
I agree. I don't care. That's the best decision we've ever made. Well, if you think of, I would burn 6-7 hours of a Saturday.
Yeah,
I'd be doing some stuff and I have to get a shower and clean up and drive in and get the studio set up and, do the show and an hour post. And
Todd, is that a brown zune right off of your right ear?
Yes, it is.
I
Yes,
just
it
happened
is.
to actually notice that.
And actually, I've got something up there that I didn't get plugged in that I got for my birthday. And I'll wait to the next. I forgot to put the battery plugged into it. It's something really, really cool. And I screwed up in not having it ready to show off today. And I don't think I have a way to plug it in here without messing a whole bunch of stuff up and disrupting the show. But for those of you watching, right there is something very interesting that we will show off on a future show right next to the Zune that's on the archive dock.
Is it to the? Is it right next to it, or is it further off to the left? Because I see a hammer.
You see the hammer, but it's in front of the hammer. There's a little. You can see there's a little reflection right now. So there's something there. People will be analyzing the video, but we'll get the LED underneath it lit up for the next episode.
So what is that white thing that's right on top of it? Off of that black thing.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. That's what we'll show.
It is.
Yeah, that's what you'll see, because you can't see it. You might be able to make out the shape of it, but we'll have it lit up on the next episode.
Okay.
Yeah. So so I moved the Red Bull sign, and that's why the Zune is showing up there. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff back there, Rob. I've got a heart.
So does that mean that a Red Bull never came through with a sponsorship?
Never.
And you pulled the plug on them?
So if you see, let's see if I can get this right here. I'm doing it wrong. If you can see right next to Thor's hammer, you see right there?
That's a Heil PR40.
That's a PR40. And then right above it is a 2400 baud modem.
Right.
All right. And then over on the side over there further, you can't see in the camera view, is a 1 gig hard drive that costs $1,000. There's all things on there that reminds me of how far we have come. And of course, the Zune is on the Relic, on the Relic stack.
So Todd, what's the analogy with the hammer? Is that what you had to use to get your computers to work in the past?
I don't know. It's just a hammer.
Damn computer. I'm going to break you.
Been there a few times.
And
then we got
throw it out the window.
And then we got some steampunk stuff up there too. So, it's too bad we didn't have a wider view. Liquor bottle.
Okay, and I see a Starship Enterprise.
Yeah, Enterprise, Steampunk Enterprise. Right. Yeah. But have you seen the R2D2? Let me show you.
Yeah.
So here's the R2D2.
Wow. Pretty fancy there.
Steampunks. I got that at Dragon Con.
So Todd, now all of our video listeners feel special. All of our audio listeners feel left out.
Just come over to the newmediashow.com. You can look at the background picture and see it. Hey, by the way, speaking of Dragon Con, I am going to go
from them.
Yes, and I am going to Dragon Con.
Physically?
Yep, Dragon Con is on.
Wow. Well, I'm game for going too.
So you should look for an email from Charles.
Okay.
So yeah, Dragon Con is on.
That's in October, right?
I think so. Atlanta. Yep. Matter of fact, I probably should make my hotel reservations.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're going.
Yeah. Because
sooner the better on that.
Yeah, trip. I'm probably already 5 miles out.
Well, I always stay far out anyway because it keeps the cost down.
Yeah, because and you can sleep at night and not have people tromping through and weird suits and unicorns.
I don't think
and
people sleep in the hotel very much anyway.
Sleep.
It's too noisy. How could you ever sleep in that hotel? Any of them?
Ultimate drunk fest, I'm telling you.
Right.
I don't think I've seen anyone party harder than those folks.
Yeah. We had quite a time at Dragon Con together, didn't we?
I got to figure out, this year I can't be a square. I got to figure out something to wear. So I guess I've got to buy some tees or something that are, cool.
Get a blow-up dinosaur suit, Todd.
No.
You're not going to do that. Okay.
No.
How about a Wookiee outfit? Now that's what I need to get, is a Wookiee outfit.
No. So with my bald head, I might be able to play something up. But I tell you what, to be quite frank with you, I think it's just going to be some Star Trek T-shirts. I think that's it.
That's it. Okay.
Because I never wear T-shirts, but I think at that event, you guys don't, the listening. Dragon Con is like, we talked about it on the show before. Everybody's dressed up, literally.
Except for us.
And you stick out like a square. You look like, you're like, they look at you like, are you a Fed or something to that effect,
Right.
And
some of them have a different outfit for every night of the Dragon Con.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Cosplay in full action. And Rob was joking about running around in a dinosaur outfit because a lot of people do.
Right.
And they have to have people lead them around because they run into people.
Because they can't see out.
That's right. And they're sweating underneath those things. I just cannot even imagine.
Yeah.
Yep. It's the only place I ever had to queue for an hour to get into the area where they had the vendors, where I picked up some of the stuff that you see here.
Mm-hmm.
It is a great shopping opportunity for props.
Right. Yep. They do make a lot of that stuff.
So the digital track is on for Dragon Con. So hopefully I'm not doing a session at 9 p.m. at night.
Well, that's not unusual.
I know, but maybe only one person will be there.
And drinks allowed.
Yeah, I might drink this year just to.
Right.
So it looks to me like from about the end of July through the end of October, we're going to be pretty busy.
Yeah. Well, I've been working on the new media show at Podcast Movement.
Oh.
So we're going to be on stage live. I don't have a date or time yet, but I've been thinking about who we want to have on the show. I sent out a couple of invites to people because I'm creating it in the Podcast Movement system.
Okay.
So we're on track for getting back up on the live stage.
So has anyone responded that you've approached, or?
I just sent all the emails out today, so
okay.
I haven't heard back from anybody.
So I guess I'm the last to know who we've invited.
At this point, yes. I think that you will likely be okay with it.
I'm hoping. I know which approach you went after, so that I already know, so I don't have to worry. I trust you completely. We didn't have to have a meeting about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going after two areas. Just to share a little tease on it. I'm going after what's going on in the advertising market around podcasting, and we've been talking about it a lot here, but I think it would be helpful to get someone from the buying side on the show here to talk a little bit about how they're looking at the market, and then also have somebody on from a big new distribution platform that's involved in premium as well as paid or free distribution. And so we shall see. I don't know if I'm going to have 2 guests on or 3. I think it depends. I mean, I'll share with you.
Okay, no worries.
All that, but yeah, I'm excited to do that. I'm doing a session for the Podcast Academy there as well. So, and I know you're doing a session. I saw you on the page. Your session is already in there and live.
I'm trying to, my theme, at least for the next. I go on themes.
I think it's a good idea.
Building audiences. So everywhere I'm going, it's about building. I'm, talking about, building audiences. That's the thing it's the number one thing podcasters ask me every single time I do a consult, by far. How do I build audience?
Their show, right?
Yep.
How do they market the show? And more, they want the hosting platforms to help them do that.
Well,
it's a tough conversation.
That's a tough one. I think that it's amazing to me that 10 years ago, if I'd have told someone that they'd have to spend a couple $1,000s in marketing, they would have just, laughed at me. Now people seriously are willing to spend that kind of money just to do a starter package, a starter launch package, or, a small few episode marketing package with a professional. So that to me is always, that's very, it's very surprising to me that I see that.
Yeah, I'm going to get a guest on this show that can talk about that.
It's,
Yeah.
and, a lot of people struggle with this, and I feel for them. You and I, we worked really, really, we slogged through this thing to build an audience. You guys don't talk to us anymore, though. Send us emails with any juicy stuff. So obviously we're not doing our job well. And then, so I guess it is just like anything else. It's a grind.
Yeah.
But, who you are does not guarantee success.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
I did just check my Starlink order. I have not. It's not yet. I'm still waiting. They haven't approved me for the dish yet. I'm still beta waiting. I'm afraid I'm going to miss the email. So every 2 or 3 days, I'll log into this portal to see if I've got to go to spend my hard-earned money to come
So
on.
they that close to getting the network deployed?
Well, they said this summer, and of course they said late summer, so I'm hoping late summer means June. I don't think that's the case.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
But
probably later summer makes more sense.
Yeah, about the time I'm going to be on travel, it's about the time that I will not have time to put the system in.
Todd, in the last couple of minutes, maybe we did talk about this app, but there's a couple of platforms. One that's called Pod LP, and it's actually an app for a operating system called Kai OS. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Neither.
It's a platform that's being run on very inexpensive mobile phones in developing countries. So it's almost free. And I guess they're starting to support Podcast 2.0 tags.
Beautiful.
And it's a app that's going to be primarily made available to potential listeners in Africa. So there's lots of people in Africa that have limited access to bandwidth and limited resources to buy technology.
Do you think that the podcasting 2.0 stuff is gaining any momentum?
I think it is. I think it's slow, but I think it's gaining momentum. Yeah.
They're doing a lot. They just approved the alt enclosure tag yesterday, finalized it. I don't know where I sit with that one, to be kind of honest.
Yeah.
Because nothing's supporting it. There's not an app. Well, maybe some of these apps that you're talking about, but there's not a lot of support out there for it yet. And
go ahead.
I think you just have to, it's one of those things where, we've been down this road before. It's like we're reinventing the wheel. I remember when I had a RIR version of this show, or of my show, a BitTorrent version of my show. I had 2 versions of MP3s for my show. So I had 5 feeds.
Right.
With 5 different versions of the show. And you know how much work that was?
Just to publish to them all.
Yeah. It was, re-encode, then get a BitTorrent up, get a tracker started, and then support. Those all had varying levels. I think the main feed had 95%, and those sub feeds had 5%. So when I look at something from a business wise, if only 5% are going to use it, do I spend the dev time to put it in place? I got to have something that 95% are going to use, not 5%. So therein lies the challenge. Maybe I can push adoption higher by implementing it, but
Yeah.
I got to have a use case for some of these features. I
Right.
got to be able to say when you are in Overcast or you're in this app, this is how this tag is going to help you,
Right.
Joe Q podcaster,
Yeah, this Pod LP app, podcast listening app, for the KaiOS kind of operating system for kind of feature phones.
I think that's I believe Adam Curry has a Kai OS phone. I bet you it was built for him. Yeah.
Well,
it's for people that want to be off the grid.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like this app, this podcast listening app, was one of the most popular apps on that platform in 2020. I guess
Wow.
it was downloaded over 5 million times.
Really?
By listeners from 175 countries.
That's impressive.
And it looks like GeoSabin even supports it. It looks like. But yeah, it's a platform that is growing in popularity with kind of third world countries.
Well, that's something I talked to the Facebook folks about too. Was their global platform, and because they were asking me for media recommendations, I said, you're going to get everything, all sizes. There's some people are going to do 64K mono, some is going to do 256 stereo. It's crazy that the formats we're seeing. And I said, maybe it would be a good idea if you put out, some guidelines on what you think would be good, because
right.
if someone's on Facebook in South Africa, the connectivity is not as good there. And do you want them to incur 100 meg or 80 meg media file downloads?
Right.
Or
right.
Streams.
Yeah. I mean, Todd, this Pod LP app has a download size. Now, this is the download size of the app itself, is only 1.19 megabytes.
That is beautiful. That tells me someone has gotten efficient in writing code. It's not bloated. Look at the size of some apps today. My God.
Yeah, and it raises other questions about encoding, like you were saying, encoding bit rates. I mean, if we want to reach all these millions of people in these other parts of the world that have been left out of podcasting, I think we're going to have to downcode.
That alt enclosure tag, therein lies the possibility.
Right.
So if we could get adoption wide enough on that, or Facebook says, hey, we'd like to have a second media file for people that are in constrained countries for bandwidth, that would go a long way in adopting. So that's why I told Facebook folks, you need to be involved, because, all right, let's just be frank. Apple is an 800-pound gorilla. Google is an 800-pound gorilla. Spotify is a 100-pound gorilla. And Facebook is an 800-pound gorilla. So if Facebook says, hey, we're worried about listening audiences in other countries, we want you to support the alt enclosure tag, so you have a smaller media file for those countries.
Right.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner, the phrase that pays.
Right.
Because it'll force adoption.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, I'm looking at the Pod LP website, and they basically have a submission form that you can submit to the platform. I would suggest, ideally you would want to submit a show to them that's probably encoded at maybe 48K or something like that.
Sure. Or 32 even.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm going to ask of this audience. You kept hearing us talk about Podcast Index 2.0 and all the things that's going on over there. Is it not time that you got involved and then started asking your podcast hosts how come they're not supporting, or because if the hosts will support it and we can get the feeds full of these new tags where appropriate, then it helps feed the ecosystem. But
Right.
I only have so much power. Todd thinks someone said, you just can make it so. I've said it on the show before. No. There's fighting priorities.
Right.
I can't just throw my pet project out there as much as I wish to sometimes.
Right.
But you, as the customer at a specific hosting company, has a small minority of people can make a big impact.
Right. Right. And if you wanted to get your podcast into this Pod LP app that's been downloaded 5 million times outside of, in 175 countries, and I'm assuming that's continuing to grow, just go to podlp.com/submit.html and just cut and paste your RSS feed in there, and you can be in that platform.
Okay, so let me bring that up here. Bada bing, bada boom. There it is.
podlp.com.
Listen.
Submit.html.
And there's two things you don't ever see. Download on the Kai store. Get it on GeoStore. So, little lightweight. Oh, nice. Look at all the devices.
Yep.
Someone's going to get mad at me, Rob. I always call those phones drug dealer phones.
Nokia.
They're not. They're not. They're just.
No.
They're
years and years ago, I used to get tons of free Nokia phones sent to me.
Free Nokia phones sent to you?
Yeah. I got that was back when I was doing my radio show.
Oh, okay.
Tech companies would send me these devices because I was talking about mobile platforms back then. And
boy, I wish they'd do that now.
Yeah, I used to get a couple of free Nokia phones every couple of months.
I do remember getting a lot of Android phones in the early days from different companies, but they don't hand those out anymore. But
no,
and they were all $100 throwaways. But
no, these were expensive phones back in the day.
Yeah,
like the N95 phone, which is a flip phone, and the one that was like a transformer that turned into a camcorder. Nokia was doing a lot of fun stuff with their mobile devices in those days.
But the primary reason a lot of these phones are used is older people in developing countries, and also people that really truly do not like the tracking that's going on with mobile devices. They prefer to be a little more private in nature.
Right.
I got a good friend. He lives in Kansas, and he thinks that having Android or a iPhone is, it's setting you up for someone to kick your door in. And he's about as straight. He's about as straight as you come. He's not one of those guys that's out there that's hiding from the law. He just doesn't like to be tracked.
Yeah.
So we're over on time, but.
So I guess these guys allow you to, this is Pod LP, allow you to buy a sponsored listing on Pod LP. So you can actually buy a featured placement, looks like.
So the submit page is podlp.com/what?
Submit.html.
Well, that's even old school in itself.
Yep.
There it is. Well, we'll have to make sure our show, look at this. Okay, let me go ahead and submit Geek News Central. Let's get it on there. Well, we'll wait to see what happens. Already submitted. Oh, let's look at New Media Show. I may have came in here and already submitted it before. I may have known about this. And New Media Show, audio feed. There it is. Copy link. And let me go ahead and submit. And submit New Media Show. What does it say? Oh, it's already submitted. So someone has, it said URL in progress. What is it going to do? Well, we'll find out if it submits.
Yeah.
All right, Rob, how can they contact you?
Well, I think the best way is on Twitter, at Rob Greenlee. And you can send me an email too if you want, robg@libsyn.com. Love to hear from you. And if any little tips or anything that you want to share with us, we're all ears.
And of course, I'm Todd at blueberry.com, at Geek News on Twitter. We will not be back with you on Saturday. We'll be back with you on Wednesday. So we want to thank you for your patience with us and doing one show a week. If you have comments on today's show, go ahead and fire us back. Brian, if you have comments, I look forward to seeing them on Twitter. And
yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, anyone else that's listening. So, but I guess I'll take us out of here. Everyone, thanks for watching or listening, and make sure you get over to newmediashow.com. Hit that follow button if you're not already followed or subscribed to the show. We want you to be so you don't miss a single episode. Everyone, take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Good to go. That's weird.